So I've been a Catholic for about 5 years now, and when I first started making videos, I remember I made a video called Being Catholic is Hard. And I made that video probably, I don't even know if I'd been a Catholic for a year yet at that point in time. And I haven't watched it in a while. I should go back and look at that to see what I said. But looking back now, after being a Catholic 5 years, I have some things I want to share with you about what I consider to be the toughest things about being Catholic. And the reason why I'm talking about this isn't because I want someone to feel like, oh, you shouldn't do this, but it's so that people can understand what it's truly like. I do talk to a lot of people that are interested in Catholicism, becoming Catholic, whether there haven't been anything related to Christianity, or whether they've been a Protestant, or maybe they've just been a person who has been a Catholic but has walked away and is now thinking about coming back. What can you be ready for in terms of the things that can be challenging? So I've got 3 things I want to share with you. The first one is this: there is so much to learn in the Catholic faith that it can oftentimes feel like you never know enough. And I experience that all the time. Every day it feels like someone says something to me that I had no clue about, or there's a new saint to learn about, or something in a council. And that's awesome, but you can sometimes feel like you're never gonna get there. You're never gonna know everything that you need to know. And that's tough because you become Catholic, you're in love with the church and you wanna learn all there is to learn about it. But what you learn is that you're never gonna stop learning. And that can be tough sometimes because you can feel like you don't measure up because there's just so much out there and you don't know enough. And that can be tough. The second thing that can be tough, and I've experienced this a lot in the last couple days, is our saints, our heroes, are so incredible. You can look at the lives of these men and women and be so intimidated by them. I've been reading about St. Francis of Assisi lately, and I read this story about him just this morning, where he was sick one day and he felt like he needed some chicken. So he ate the chicken, but then felt so convicted that he did something gluttonous that he had one of his brothers in his community tie him up with a rope and drag him around the streets, chastising him for eating this gluttonous food. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, whoa, I could never live up to something like that. And that can happen. I mean, I read the diary of St. Faustina, and I'm reading her diary and just blown away at how connected to God she is. And it's intimidating sometimes when you look at the lives of our heroes, the saints, because you can think to yourself, I could never be anywhere near as holy as these people are, which can lead you to this place of comparison, and you might feel like you'll never measure up. And that's a tough thing sometimes, when you see these people's lives and feel like that level of holiness can be so unobtainable, and you're just like, you get down on yourself. The third thing about Catholicism that can be tough is recognizing the tension that lies between having a perfect faith in the midst of imperfect human beings, even Catholics, right? Especially Catholics. And you join the church and you feel like, all right, I'm here. We're all on the same page. We all have the same love for the church and for Christ, and we all have the same beliefs and the same doctrine. But then what you realize is just because someone is Catholic doesn't make them a perfect person, or even a good person for you to be around in terms of your faith. Because there's a lot of toxic Catholics out there that take their view of things and maybe want to impose it on you, or maybe behave in ways that are unhelpful to you, or even just downright evil. And when you come into the church, you can have this idea that it's going to be just awesome all the time, and that everybody's going to get along, and everybody's going to be unified. And then you realize that, hey, that's not how it is. And that can be tough as well. So what do you do with these things? What's the way to deal with these tough things? First of all, I want to encourage you to embrace the fact that it is tough. Embrace the tough. It shouldn't be easy. You don't want your faith to be easy. And being a Catholic shouldn't be easy. If you look at the lives of the saints, if you look at what Christ said in the Gospels and how the apostles lived their lives, their faith wasn't easy either, living it out. And it was the perfect faith, right? And that's what we believe we participate in as Catholics. But yet, why then do we want it to be easy? We shouldn't. So embrace the tough. That's number one. So how do you deal with the fact that you don't know everything and that there's so much to learn? Well, I would say this, go at your own pace. When it comes to recognizing that there's so much to learn, be thankful for that. Be thankful that you've got your entire life to dig deeper, but go at your own pace and don't be intimidated by all the things that you don't know, but really soak in and appreciate the things that you're learning. Keep going, my friends. The second thing I would say when it comes to the saints is be inspired by the saints, but don't get drawn into this unhealthy comparison. They're saints for a reason. I'm reading about St. Francis of Assisi for a reason. He's not just some regular guy. And there's things about that are obviously very inspiring. But if I get focused on myself when I read this stuff, that's not the way to go, right? I need to be focused and inspired, but not fall into the comparison trap. Take what you can learn and incorporate it in your life. But remember, the saints are trying to point you to Christ. And they would tell you, if they could sit down and have a cup of coffee with you, they would say, look, hey, I've got my own set of issues. I'm not there either. They would never point to themselves and say, hey, look at me and how amazing I am. They're going to point you to Jesus anyway. So be inspired by them, but don't feel like you have to be exactly like them and live up to everything that they have done. And the third thing is this. When it comes to that tension between imperfect Catholic people within the perfect Catholic faith, remove yourself from toxic people. You don't have to live up to somebody else's standard for what it means for you to be like the proper Catholic or to be Catholic enough. And if you've got people in your life that are always judging you and looking down on you and making you feel like you don't live up to their standards, then guess what? It's time to distance yourself from them. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have to love them. It doesn't mean that you don't have to show them Christ, and especially if you're like in a relationship with them, if they're part of your life day to day. But if there are people in your life that are speaking into you, maybe they're on YouTube or through books or whatever, that aren't helpful to you as you grow in your faith, then turn it off. Don't allow yourself to be drugged down by other people. And also be aware of the fact that just because someone is Catholic, they're still a sinner. And if you get so focused on the sins of other human beings, that's going to discourage you and pull you away from Christ. So focus on things that are helpful, that are going to build you up, and the people that are helpful and that are going to build you up. And if someone is toxic and tearing you down and judging you, hey, you know what? You live your life for Jesus. You don't live your life for them. I was thinking about this in light of what Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount when he talked about be careful not to do your acts of righteousness to be seen by other people. And he was talking specifically about people who were doing acts of righteousness so that everybody would admire them, like the Pharisees, and they'd stand on the corners and pray their prayers loudly. They would make big commotion out of how much they gave. And Jesus was showing us that sometimes people do their acts of righteousness because they have pride and they want other people to see how amazing they are. But it also made me think about sometimes people do their acts of righteousness because they feel insecure and they want to be accepted by the right kinds of people. And we have to be careful for that as well. It's the other side of that coin, but it's still important to think about. Have you ever fallen into the trap of doing something or not doing something because you want the approval of some other person who has set up this standard for what it means to be Catholic enough or whatever enough? So you're like, okay, well, I got to do that because that person says that's what I have to do. Friends, we have to be careful of things like that. But that's what's tough about the faith, is when human beings get involved, we can oftentimes import our own insecurities or our own pride into that expression. And then knowingly or unknowingly, we can put that on other people, and people can put that on us. And that can be a tough thing at times. But all in all, my friends, I would tell you this. The tough things about the Catholic faith are things that ultimately are going to lead you into a greater level of holiness if you embrace the tough and walk into it. And if you felt like you just haven't measured up and you're like, yeah, I know it, I get it, it's just too tough, I don't think I have what it takes, then I want you to also remember the words of Jesus when he said, come to me, all you who are heavy burdened, and I will give you rest for your souls. He was talking to people who were trying to live up to their Judaism at the time. And they were dealing with the things that were tough about that. And he was saying, look, at the end of the day, come to me and I will give you rest. If you need rest from all this stuff, come to Jesus and he will provide that for you. But at the same time, as he calls you on that journey of faithfulness and discipleship, he is going to push you into new levels of holiness and intimacy with God that'll be better than you can ever possibly imagine. So yes, there are things about Catholicism that are tough, but I will tell you this, the things that God has brought into your life, even though they might be tough, if you walk in and through them and you trust God and hang on to him tightly and let his grace wash over you, it'll be more amazing than you can possibly imagine. Friends, I've been doing this now for a little over 5 years, and I can tell you this, I'm so grateful and thankful for where God is bringing me in my faith. And every day I still feel like, yeah, there are things that are tough, but I'm so grateful and thankful. And I wonder if in the next 5 years, when I sit down to reflect on what's tough about Catholicism 10 years, and I'll have different things to say. And maybe you have things that I didn't mention that are tough for you. You know, let us know in the comments what they are. And remember, this isn't there so we can complain and whine. That's not what we're doing. We're helping ourselves understand what it means to walk this journey. And yes, it's gonna be hard, but it's gonna be so worth it. So share your experience with the rest of us down in the comments. We'd love to hear that. And pray for me, and I'll pray for you, my friends. Thank you so much for watching this video. Take care, and God bless.